Okay, so we're going to talk about fraction multiplication as scaling. What does actually scaling mean? It means to make something either bigger or smaller. So we know that any fraction that is something over itself is equal to 1, right? So what about a fraction that looks something like that? That is less than 1. And a fraction that is something like this is greater than 1. So if we take any of these fractions and multiply them times another fraction, we know that what's going to happen is we're going to either make that original fraction bigger or smaller. So if we take 1 and multiply it times a fraction, it's going to do what? It's going to stay the same, obviously. If we take something and multiply that less than 1, that fraction times another fraction, it's going to be smaller. And if we multiply that one that is greater than 1 times a fraction, it's going to make that original fraction bigger. So remember that this one is also called an improper fraction. So that 7/4 can be also turned into a mixed number. So remember that when you're moving from something like 7/4, you have to figure out, well, how many times can 4 go into 7? Well, it can only go one whole time, and then what's my leftover? You have to count up 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's actually the same thing as 1 and 3/4. So 1 and 3/4 and 7/4, those are the same thing. So multiplying either of those times another fraction is going to give me a fraction that's bigger than 1. So I'm just going to hold all of these fractions that I'm talking about, the 3/3, the 1/4, and the 1 and 3/4, up here at the top, and we're going to multiply them. Okay, so I want a fraction that I'm going to do this with. So I'm going to take maybe 3/5. So we're going to multiply 3/5 first by 3/3. So 3/5 times 3/3 is the same thing as 3/5 times 1. So 3/5 times 1, what is that going to give me? Well, it's going to be 3/5. That's it. It's 3/5 because 3/5 times 1 is also 1. All right, let's do the next one. 3/5 times 1/4. So I'm going to switch that out and I'm going to call it 3/5 times a little less than 1. I'm going to do a box here and I'm going to show you the number. And I'm going to color it in. So if it's 3/5 times less than 1, I'm going to get a number that is smaller than 3/5. So I'm going to just write less than 3/5. So 3/5 times something that is smaller than 1 is going to be less than 3/5. Do I need to know exactly what it is? Not necessarily. And then the last one, 3/5 times 1 and 3/4. So that's 3/5 times 1 whole and 1, 2, 3/4. Well, that's going to give me more than 3/5. More than 3/5. So for this particular idea of multiplication of fractions by scaling, I don't actually care or need to know what the actual answer is. I just need to know, is it going to be 1 that I'm doing it with? Is it going to be less than 1 or is it going to be more than 1? Because the answer is going to be the same, less than, or more than. That's all I care about. So if it's 1, it's going to be the same. If it's a fraction that is less than 1, it's going to be less than that original fraction. And if it is a fraction that is more than 1, it is going to be more than that original fraction.